Welcome to the DPS 101 podcast. This is the podcast version of the DPS 101 Community Leadership course, which gives members of our community a chance to learn directly from the highest ranking leaders in Denver Public Schools and get a behind-the-scenes look at how a school district operates. My name is Nicole Brady. I'm Communications and Community Engagement Manager for DPS. And my guest today for this second episode is DPS Deputy Superintendent Dr. Tony Smith. Thank you so much for being here, Tony.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And you have already given your in-person demonstration for DPS 101. Do you enjoy this course?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity to meet with community members and share a little bit about myself, as well as learn some of their questions and, just engage and interact.
Awesome. This is designed to mimic the in-person courses that people can register for every year. And so this is a leadership course that takes community members through different offices in DPS, from finances to communications to human resources. So you really get a big picture look at how a district operates. And we're going to talk with Tony here about the Office of Schools specifically. Another thing that community members who get into this course can learn about is leadership. And so I'd like to start, Tony, just by having you tell us a little bit about your backstory again, how you went from a teacher in schools to a leadership position you hold today.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was, and as I always say, I played almost every position in a school system. And by the grace of God, I've had mentors and different individuals that have seen my potential and encouraged me to continue to grow and to lead. And at the core of it has been, I have a vision for education that includes all students and believe heavily that all kids can be successful. And given our roles in education, we have the obligation to make sure that those sacred promises are kept to families and to students and to prepare the next generation. So I just get extremely excited about the next generation of leader who I can pour into, similar to what people have poured into me, as well as taking the lessons from my parents. I always tell people that my dad was a cab driver in Chicago, Illinois for 40 years. And he taught me the value of hard work. And my mom was a high school dropout who taught me the value of education and held me to an expectation and standard. And so with that, I was able to achieve a tremendous amount in my life. And I hope to pass on and be a mentor and support to others who want to lead and lead towards a better world for all through the lens of education.
The Office of Schools oversees a lot of what happens in the classrooms in DPS day to day. So I think that's great that you actually have a lens of someone who was a school principal, who was in classrooms in parts of your career. But give us an overview first of what the Office of Schools does on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so the Office of Schools oversees, oversees schools, classrooms, attendance, anything that has anything to do with teaching and learning is a part of the Office of Schools. And our job is to create systems and structures that allow teachers to reach every kid. We want to remove barriers, provide supports, and provide the best learning opportunities, not only for our adults in terms of our teaching and learning professional development, but also for our leaders to help them figure out how to solve problems at their level, but then also for our students, figuring out how to get them the most rigorous and relevant information to guide their educational experience.
When we look at what's happening in classrooms in DPS right now, we know that in the last few years, DPS adopted a new instructional framework, and that was centered around high-quality instructional materials, or what you'll hear HQIM a lot.
Right.
How did that process begin? How did it evolve? Can you kind of take us back a few years ago to how this was implemented?
Yeah, so we looked at the data coming out of Denver Public Schools prior to creating the framework or reinstituting the framework. And let me say, that's not a new thing. That is the basis of education. And so we understood who was succeeding, who wasn't succeeding. We also at that time we were experiencing a tremendous amount of turnover, not only post-COVID teacher resignations, but also post-COVID leader resignations. And we had a lot of new blood in the system. And so what we decided to do was to return to the roots of true, strong instructional preparation, which is Tier 1 instruction. And the instructional framework helps us to focus in on assessment, curriculum, and professional learning as a means of really strengthening that tier 1 classroom level, meaning that if kids learn it well and they learn it the first time, teachers then have tremendous opportunities to expand learning, to grow learning, to provide additional opportunities. And so when we think about the curriculum and how we prepare teachers to understand and internalize curriculum, how we look at the assessments and data that we have to triangulate, but then also when we think about the professional learning that we provide, and I might have said this in the opposite order, but the professional learning that we provide that is connected to what kids are or are not grasping, what they're grappling with, the things that teachers are or are not grasping or grappling with. Now we create that kind of triangle, but more a circle, that we can continue to get better at getting better. And so I know Dr. Morero always says that we need to get better at getting better. But at the core of it is there's no magic bullet in education. We talk about the achievement gap and we talk about what kids can and can't do, and it all stems from high quality instructional materials and strong tier 1 instruction. And from that, thinking about the instructional framework, how we then engage students in covering gaps that they may have, supplementing their learning. But we can't remediate our way out of achievement gaps, and we can't provide magic bullets for kids to just go learn. So we have to do our legwork, and what the instructional framework does is ground us in tier 1 instruction.
I want to get into how this actually unfolds from the district and from instructional coaches and people like that down to the classroom teacher. So when I go to work in our DPS building every day, just to let people behind the curtain a little, there are so many departments. I couldn't possibly tell you what floor they're all on, but there's the math department, there's the English department, there's everything in between, humanities, science, all of that. So can you talk about kind of that layer of professionals in DPS who are working in headquarters right now?
Yeah.
And then we'll get down to the schools.
The central office staff do a tremendous job of being experts in their field. And so, for example, we have elementary content specialists, and we have math content specialists. We have literacy or humanities content specialists, art content specialists. And their goal and their job is to be experts in their field. That being said, they support schools with providing professional learning as well as coaching opportunities aligned to the curriculum. Really thinking about curriculum embedded assessments, helping them understand what kids are struggling with, what they're not struggling with, what are the low-hanging fruit, what are the complex standards, helping them unpack the standards to see what kids should be able to do and know. So they're really complex, and I call them the technicians of the curriculum world. And they push in and support schools based on their context and need. They do this through a number of ways, but one is the walkthrough. We have a cadence of walkthroughs that specialists and network directors and executive directors will get together along with content directors to walk through schools and see, hey, first, are we aligned to the curriculum? What struggles are the teachers having with the curriculum? Are we seeing the curriculum translate to the kids? What struggles are the kids having? And then they collaborate on what are some things that we need to change? How do we support you? How do we help you? And really created a service-oriented model so that schools, if they have a struggle in math, can get that math-targeted support at the teacher level, providing additional opportunities to increase and enhance efficacy and making sure that the kids get what they need. And again, teaching is as much an art as it is a science. And I remember my first couple years as a teacher when I really wasn't good, and I needed that coaching and I needed that support, and I needed somebody who had different expertise to give me tricks and of the trade or help me fill my tool bag, but also help me understand where I'm going in this curriculum. And when you think about the instructional framework and the HQIM, it spawned from two main focus areas that we had post-pandemic, which was making sure that every kid was in a safe and welcoming environment, as well as that they were exposed to grade level text and task. Yeah. And that was the foundation for HQIM and the instructional framework. So it's a continuation of making sure that we hold the level of expectation of the teacher and of the student, but then again, help them, provide them supports, provide them resources, answer questions. What do you need in order to get there? Because no teacher survives as an island, and no school is independently able to do all of these things on their own, because education is a difficult task. It's a hard job, and one that only, I always like to say, the select few are able to do. And so we want to support them, provide as many resources as possible for them to become truly masters of their craft.
How at the school level do you get the buy-in you need for something like this to work? So when you come up with a plan, a high-level plan, and one that's supposed to be, rolled out pretty much equitably around the district, how then were you able to get that buy-in from principals and teachers who may have had their way of doing things?
Yeah, we asked the question, what do you think about this? And they gave us their honest feedback, inputs, and we've done that through a multitude of modalities, be it one is a survey that we send out, and we try to do that quarterly or at least on a semester basis to understand where are the pain points and where do we need to pivot as a academics team or a school team to better support. Obviously, we have so many teachers that we can't ask every individual teacher, but we have things like the Teacher Leader Advisory Council who comes in and tells us, here's what my school is struggling with, here's what my people are struggling with. You think about the RFP process and how we get input and feedback from the end user, right? And I think our former Chief of Staff, Dr. Simone Wright, coined the phrase user-centered with a research-based focus. And so, we take best practices and research-based practices, and we send them to the end user and say, what sense does this make, and how would you implement that? And we constantly try to iterate to ensure that not only are we responding to what schools, principals, and teachers need, but it's sustainable, and we're able to do it really, really, really well. And that sometimes requires us to not do a lot, to do a few things really well and cut the noise for others. And so when I think about the CKLA curriculum that we launched at the same time everybody else did, quite honestly, it was a K-3 adoption. Well, what we heard from our grades 4 or 5 was that they didn't have a coherent curriculum and they really liked what was going on. So based on their feedback and their input, what we did is adopted CKLA as a curriculum K-5. But, that being said, we also have some things that we talk about, which is assessment. DIBELS is an assessment that we use to measure read-act growth and to monitor how kids are reading on grade level or below grade level. And that was a discussion of really high-performing schools and school leaders and asking their teachers, what do you need? And talk to me about why you like this platform. And then providing the opportunity for schools through either our flexibility process or through our engagement with them to opt into these opportunities. Mind you, we try not to mandate anything. DPS is a very flexibility and choice-driven district, and so we provide the context, the rationale, and the data, and we allow our schools to choose what it is they want to do. And I think what we've seen over the past couple of years is they appreciate coherence, they appreciate the support that they're being provided, and they appreciate a community of learners all focused on the same thing. And that has minimized a lot of the noise that comes out across the board.
And you do things like the regular data mines. Those are interesting meetings that happen where school leaders will come to central office and tell you what they need. Is that right?
Yeah, so the data mine is a progress monitoring platform that allows us to take some of the schools that are either approaching state clock intervention or on the clock intervention to really progress monitor their growth and to understand what it is that we need to continue to do as a district to support that school. And it's a mechanism of shared accountability. Another example is recently we conducted a night of minds, not mine, but mind, MIND. And we brought high-performing veteran school leaders to the central office to give us feedback on how we need to think about our system differently, what things make sense, what things don't make sense, and how we can be better. And we are going to continue to engage our school leaders, our teachers, and our teacher leaders in conversations that say, hey, help us see what we're not seeing or give us your perspective. Because, again, the idea that every school is a monolith is absolutely out. It's out the door, and we want to ensure that we're meeting the needs of teachers and students where they are based on their context, but also making systems that make sense. Part of our strategic roadmap in this current iteration is create strong systems that support the adult and yield benefit to the student. And the more feedback we've gotten, the better and better we've been able to be. And I'm just so appreciative for those first who are trusting enough to give us that feedback, but thoughtful enough to really articulate the way we need to be better for our teachers, for our leaders, for our parents, and for our kids.
Yeah, and like any good organization would, you seek that outside perspective sometimes, which I think is great. I want to talk a little bit about how family engagement and community engagement helps the district maintain accountability. We've talked, you and I, recently about the DAC, the District Accountability Committee, the CSCs, which are the collaborative school committees or the accountability committees for each individual school. That is not necessarily right under your department, but it is critical to the work that happens for the Office of Schools. Is that right?
It is. It's an opportunity for us to get another data point in terms of feedback, to hear how people are experiencing and understanding our system, to answer questions, right? To tell our own story and to help strengthen a narrative that may be misunderstood, and to just to be there, to be a transparent form of educational viability, right? We're trying to help people understand what it is we're doing, how we're doing it, why we think it's successful, see some pieces and blind spots that we may not understand or see, and then ultimately get better. And I think it fits really well in this concept that we talk about a lot, which is that golden triangle, which is the school, the family, and the community. And so if we can think about education and improving education through that lens, it provides us entry points and leverage in all aspects of a student's life that can ultimately help them achieve greater outcomes.
Excellent. And good for people to know if you don't make it into the DPS 101 leadership course because, spots are limited each year. There are opportunities to get involved in things like the CSC and really get an inside look at how schools are run and even how the district is run to some extent.
Yeah.
And how they interact.
Yeah, I think, even if you can't get into DPS 101, join your CSC or be a part of the DAC, as a community member and as a parent of a DPS student, your input is extremely important. You are the foremost expert on your student, right? And we work heavily to make sure that your student's successful, and that's a partnership. And so similar to any other organization, you know most about the thing you send to us, which is your most valuable asset, in my opinion, ever, right? My kids are my most valuable assets. I value them amongst all. This is the most important thing in my life, and you trust us with those every day. And so you deserve a voice at the table, and there's a multitude of avenues that you can go through to give us feedback, to talk to us, to understand. But starting at your school, being a presence and being curious about what goes on in the day-to-day activities is really important.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about how education is always evolving, and one thing that's been on everyone's minds lately is artificial intelligence. Recently, the district announced it would ban ChatGPT on student devices within the district, so there was a bit of a conversation around that, but that's just one very small conversation that's been happening around AI in DPS. We've been talking about how it's being implemented in classrooms, how teachers are using it, how staff at DPS is using it.
Right.
So kind of give us an overview of how you see this evolving and maybe the benefits and the challenges.
Yeah, I'll start with the challenges, which is technology moves at such a pace that it's hard to keep up with. And I'm really excited to Dr. Billy Sayers, really excited for the work that Dr. Billy Sayers and his team are doing to really truly understand AI as an educational tool and to roll it out to school leaders and to staff and teachers as just that, a tool. I think from my perspective, AI is best suited for kids when it starts with a human and ends with a human and is really used to support their learning and expand their learning. AI offers such a great insight into thinking and can provide clarity, can provide additional resources, and when misused can provide misinformation, bias, and not be a tool, it can be a crutch. And so our responsibility is to, one, understand how we want to see kids engage with this, again, through a conversation of first safety, making sure that we keep them safe not only in the physical environment but also in the digital spaces, socially, emotionally, psychologically, physically. We have to keep our kids safe. once we've kind of figured that out, then let's talk about the landscape of AI, what it can do and what it can't do, and what we're prepared to monitor and to support with. And I always told, when I was a principal, I always told my teachers, it's like driving a Ferrari. It's a great car, but if you don't know how to drive it, you're going to ruin it. And you might wreck it, and you'll never see the full potential of a beautiful piece of machinery. So let's take the time to learn about the tool, and then use the steering committees that we have to give input and feedback. Use student experience as a guiding tool. Use teacher efficacy. Use all of the pieces that we have at our disposal, to truly understand what is the potential of this tool, again, to supplement education, not to supplant education. I don't want this tool to replace adults, i.e. teachers, which is a big fear. I want this tool to help kids go deeper, to learn and give them a little bit of agency in correcting their own misunderstandings. I want this tool to be a resource to parents when they don't know how to teach math, or they're struggling to understand a concept, so they can build their own efficacy and say, hey, AI, tell me XYZ so that I can explain this to my son or daughter. I want it to be a thing that equalizes the playing field and provides so many opportunities for kids to think and dream, but then also truly understand what's the questions that they're not asking, what are the pieces of the puzzle that they're not seeing, so that they can continue their educational pursuits and endeavors to an unimaginable space. And so AI, science fiction made reality. And we still need to understand how to use this tool in the most beneficial and effective way. And I think, again, Dr. Billy Sayers and his team are really working hard to engage teachers and leaders. And what does it mean for AI in the classroom? What does it mean for AI at the teacher development level? And ultimately, how will kids interact and engage with this resource?
I bring it up because it is certainly poised to change the workplace at DPS and the classroom experience at DPS as much as any technology before it has, if not more. The internet, computers, anything that we saw come into schools in our own lifetimes. And this one really is changing everyday activity within this huge district, which is a district of 14,000 employees, 90,000 students.
Yeah.
That's a large number of people that are impacted by this. So really, I just want to get your final thoughts. How can we all go out and be a part of making students successful here within Denver and in our communities?
Yeah, that's a broad question, because I think there's so many facets of it. I think at the parent level, being a partner with your school, we want to see you as a partner, and that partnership is it's never 50-50, it's 100-100. What I mean by that is we want to understand how best to serve your kid and make sure that their educational experience is meeting their needs and helping them grow and achieve. And that requires partnership. It's not us doing to you, it's not us doing for you, it's us doing with you. I think with the community is how the community can become engaged as a part of Denver Public Schools, making sure that resources that the district can't provide, that the community can step in, and vice versa, where DPS can funnel parents and families to the community to meet some of these needs. I also think at the school level, it's truly understanding and becoming versed in what your kids are expected to do and how they're expected to do it, and supporting your kids in navigating their educational career. Because that's one thing that's consistent. We want to build not just great third graders and fourth graders, but lifetime learners, and making sure that, again, that partnership is strong. DPS is one of the best performing districts in the state of Colorado. We're the largest district in the state of Colorado, and we're one of the most rigorous in terms of it is harder to graduate from Denver Public Schools than it is from many, if not 90% of the districts in the state of Colorado. And sometimes I don't think we really understand the hard work that our teachers and school leaders do and the pride that they take in our kids and our students. And creating a narrative that is really celebratory of the work that they are putting in and day out and the success that they want to see. having pride in DPS. I'm so proud to be a part of DPS. I'm so proud to be a teacher, have been a school leader, and the work that we've been able to accomplish here, because I work with some of the most amazing professionals who care so deeply about the success of students, about the success of the district, but also the success of Denver. And embracing that and becoming partners in that work is really exciting. So it's really being a good neighbor, a good partner, a good parent, a good teacher, a good leader, doing what it takes to find joy, but also to make sure that our kids have the best experience possible, and truly understand why DPS is the best district in the state of Colorado. We have a long way to go in terms of being the best district in the country, but we are committed and we are excited about the work that's going on, and there's no substitute for hard work. And we are doing that hard work to move the needle every day. And I would really want parents to suspend narratives that we are trying to do too, but also become our partner in doing with.
I love that answer, and I think about the mentorship program that I'm a part of with DPS, the DPS mentoring program, and there are people who live up in Broomfield who come down to mentor at a DPS school, and all over the place really. And I think how great is that these companies have signed their employees up to be mentors within Denver Public Schools, because they see that partnership as being so important. It goes beyond just this regional area. You can make such a difference in the future of this whole area by investing some time to care about what's going on in Denver, Denver Public Schools.
I think, not only the corporate support that we receive and the DPS Foundation and some of the partnerships that they've been able to, through the leadership of Sarah Hazel, been able to establish are phenomenal. But I think at the local level, so if you go to Stedman Elementary on Friday, Principal Robin Trotter has grandparents reading to kids. Right? To see a school full of retirees and grandparents reading to kids and helping them increase their literacy is amazing. Schools like Park Hill that have such an engaged PTO that show up to meet the needs and support kids at every point in time. The travel that happens at McCullough International, the travel that happens at South High School, the work that's happening at Montbello Middle School, and the zero cell phone policy that is thriving in that school.
Wow.
I mean, we have so many great things happening internally, as well as when you overlay partnerships from United Airlines, when you overlay partnerships through some of our Denver-based companies. I think about the city or county of Denver and the partnerships we have with them and how MySpark became a thing. People really care and love Denver, and they really love Denver Public Schools, and we are excited to be capitalizing on all of the support that we get, but also increase not only the support, but the pride in our district.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's given people a little bit of a taste of what it's like to run a major school district like DPS. And as Deputy Superintendent, you certainly are working with all of these teams. So I think having you here was great to get that big picture overview of running a massive school district.
I always say spokes on a wheel, right? So we all play our part and hold up the district in the way that we can. And we work with some pretty talented and amazing individuals who really want to see DPS kids win.
Wonderful. Dr. Tony Smith, thank you so much for spending some time with us. This has been DPS 101. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.